What's up, guys? Tim Iaria again, back here with another unsung professional wrestling eras, a series that I've been doing on this YouTube channel about eras in professional wrestling that I feel like don't get a lot of play, that don't get hyped enough, maybe don't get remembered as well as they should have. And if I can put these out there, and hopefully maybe if one person sees it and decides to utilize this information or take my advice and go back and rewatch some of this stuff on something, let's say like a WWE network, you might find that it might be some of your favorite matches or events or time periods to watch as well. I'm back in my jammas. I'm out here in my garage. I don't have any notes taken down. I don't have any I'm not going to do any editing, no split videos or anything like that with this. I'm just shooting from the hip like we would be convoing here if we were sitting in my garage. Once again, like I said in every video, I'm not talking about the golden age of wrestling, the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. I'm not going to talk about the boom, the rock and wrestling era of 84, 85, 86. I'm not going to talk about the Attitude Era. And we're actually sort of past the Attitude Era now, timeline-wise, because those eras get talked about a lot, get books written about a lot, have a lot of like Bleacher Report articles and videos and stuff like that done about them. So these are some of the unsung hero eras, in my opinion, of pro wrestling, stuff that you may have missed or may not even know happened. So right now today what I want to talk about is 2012's NXT. I'm going to start in the middle of the year in 2012. Now, NXT didn't get takeovers, which was their big, it's their sort of their pay-per-view. They didn't get takeovers till I believe 2014 was the first one. So we're talking about 2012 here, in the middle of 2012. We're 2 years before we're even going to see, big main event type cards put together by NXT. NXT sort of evolved, a little bit of a quick backstory, it sort of evolved from Florida Championship Wrestling, I believe. Florida Championship Wrestling was sort of the feeder, the minor leagues at WWF at the time. Historically, they've done Ohio Valley Wrestling was sort of a minor league for a little while. They had Smoky Mountain on sort of as like a partnership thing. And Florida Championship Wrestling was their new one after Ohio Valley Wrestling had ended, or their partnership had ended, or whatever. They did a TV show, like a reality TV show, NXT. That's what it started as. In 2010, it was like a contest, like they did Tough Enough back in the day. WWE used to do Tough Enough, and the winner of this reality show, after doing all the stunts and eliminations and all that, would get a WWE contract. The reality show started in 2010. And you had guys that won it, like Wade Barrett was a winner of the first season. In the second season, you had Caval win it, who ended up going on to be Low-Key, and he had did a lot of big stuff with TNA and New Japan, I think, and stuff like that. Very good cruiserweight type guy. You had Caitlyn win it, and the season that she won it, Naomi was the runner-up, just goes to show you how loaded the talent was. Caitlyn, she briefly did another thing, I think with the WWE, maybe with one of the women's Royal Rumbles. She came back or something like that. But she was a mainstay for a little while on the main roster. Season 4, they had Johnny Curtis won. Johnny Curtis, popularly known as Fandango right now. He's currently one half of the NXT Tag Champions. So it's funny seeing him in 2010. Still there, still trying to do his thing. He was the winner. And Brodus Clay was the runner-up for that season, which is funny. And then season 5, they did a weird thing where there was no winner. They had all the people I guess doing the show and stuff like that, but then instead of a winner, they said like, oh, tune in next week for a different NXT. And then after that season is when they sort of started the episodic television of NXT. Another thing too, I'm a big fan of NXT. I think they do television programming very well. They don't do 3 hours. They don't do a lot of story, and then 5 minutes of wrestling, and then story. NXT is more wrestling, 5 minutes of story, wrestling. And they do squash match as well. They do competitive talent match as well. So I actually prefer NXT's weekly episodic television to, let's say, something like SmackDown or Raw or even AEW, Monday Night Nitro, all that. They were supposed to have, there's a lost season of NXT that never got published or whatever. They, according to Wikipedia, I just have my Wikipedia up, but the season that followed, the one that didn't have a winner, they said that the wrestlers that would have been featured were Big E Langston, Bo Dallas, Damian Sandow, Jinder Mahal, Hunico, who ended up becoming a Sin Cara not too long after this, Leo Kruger, who turned into Adam Rose. He was something else maybe, I think, around then too, but Adam Rose was the character that he ended up portraying and then leaving the company. Seth Rollins, who was the first NXT champion, and Xavier Woods. So those dudes, those those 8 guys were sort of the basis, they're sort of the founding fathers, in my opinion, of NXT in its early stages, and in this 2012 era where they went from sort of being formerly a regional Florida thing to, you know, really working with a lot of up-and-comers with, you know, really not a lot of star power. And then in 2012, you really start to see the tide kind of shift, and a lot more guys were stepping up to the plate. They were bringing WWE guys into NXT to sort of wrestle with other guys to put them over. So this was sort of the beginning. And that class I really like. Big E Langston is former NXT champ. Bo Dallas, former NXT champ. Jinder Mahal made the tournament final for the first NXT title. Seth Rollins, obviously first champion. So a lot of good stuff here. Like I said, there's no pay-per-views at the time, and usually these last couple of videos I've just been going from pay-per-view to pay-per-view and showing off, you know, what kind of matches were going on, what storylines were going on at the time, what kind of talent was here. But what I want to do for this is I'm basically just going to start with the NXT TV show that you can watch on the WWE Network now. Let's say in the middle of 2012. So there's a July 4th showing, 4th of July episode. Again, it's not tons and tons of matches on each one because I think they were maybe even an hour back then. I don't think they had even gone to 2 hours. Paige loses in the opening match against Sofia Cortez. Sofia Cortez, I don't remember much about her, but it's funny, you know, Paige obviously being the first NXT Women's Champion, and here she is in the curtain jerker, and she goes, you know, she gets pinned in 2:24. Seth Rollins beats Camacho with Hunico in his corner. Seth Rollins obviously, again, working on his way up. He was big in, I think, Ring of Honor and the indie scenes for a little while as Tyler Black. They brought him in here, and you can see this is him starting to cut his teeth and work towards that big main event push. Camacho and Hunico. Camacho is a New Japan guy now. He's one of the, I think he's Haku's kid, and maybe Tamatanga or something like that. Again, I'm not fact checking. I don't have a ton of pre-written stuff. Corey Graves is still a competitor at this time. Corey Graves, I believe, is a former NXT champion as well. A lot of people forget that. Never really loved his character as a wrestler. He's all right as a commentator, but it's funny seeing him in the ring here. Derek Bateman loses to Jinder Mahal on this show. Derek Bateman, known as EC3 now, former TNA champion a bunch of times and stuff like that. And then in the main event of this, you had Michael McGillicuddy, Camacho, and Hunico. Michael McGillicuddy was Curtis Axel, Mr. Perfect's kid. They defeat Tyson Kidd, Seth Rollins, and Bo Dallas in the final. So that's a fun little 6-man. Again, sort of the stalwarts, again, of NXT at the time. The following week, after July 4th, July 11th, also this is taking part at Full Sail University, famously. Now we start to see things heat up a little bit. You had Bray Wyatt beats Aiden English here in 1:50. This was right when Bray Wyatt was starting to come in. Bray Wyatt's initial foray into the company, all this NXT stuff. He had done the Husky Harris gimmick with what was the stable that was? Nexus. He was Husky Harris. That didn't really play out. Went away for a little while. IRS's kid. IRS was an agent, Mike Rotunda, in the WWE, I guess at the time. So here he is back starting this new gimmick, which would obviously propel him into the main event. They had the Primetime Players defeat the Usos in a 12-minute match, which is fun. Titus O'Neil still with the company, still doesn't have an elite action figure for some reason. He's been in the company for like 20 years, and they still haven't given him an elite action figure yet. And the Usos obviously being probably the best tag team in the company right now, and it's fun to see them, not getting the push there. And then they had Sheamus versus Alberto Del Rio for a World Heavyweight Championship match in a dark match. Again, so this was them trying to bring in those main roster guys to put a little bit more of a spark on the talent roster that they had. So that's fun to see that. July 18th of 2012 now, if you go back and watch. Tamina Snuka beats Caitlyn. Caitlyn, again, was a former winner of NXT. Tamina Snuka, they were starting to, she's a big monster heel type thing, so this is her coming in. You see a lot of Percy Watson in these matches. Percy Watson was sort of a guy that did a lot of jobs for NXT back then. He never really got a lot of big play, never made it to the main roster or anything like that, never had an NXT title, but he's here. You had Leo Kruger versus Richie Steamboat. Leo Kruger beats Richie Steamboat on this episode. The Leo Kruger character I really, really liked. He was sort of like a South African hunter guy, but scary and had a weird accent and was almost sort of reminiscent of like Skinner from the early 90s. And that gimmick I thought worked a lot better for him than the Adam Rose character he would go on to portray, which would be, sort of that would be the end of his WWE run. Again, Paige goes down to Raquel Diaz. I believe Raquel Diaz might have been Eddie Guerrero's daughter. I'm not going to fact check that, but that may be the case. And again, Paige doesn't get any favors here. And then the main event's Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater. Justin Gabriel goes over Heath Slater. Again, two former Nexus guys. I always thought Justin Gabriel was a very, very good talent. He's young, he's handsome, got the kind of looks like a model, but also does the crazy flips and is sort of a daredevil stuntman type thing. I thought they probably could have done more with him. But they did not. I think he got a tag title run or two on the main roster even. But I'm surprised that the WWE didn't try to do more to keep hold of him or utilize him a little better. All right, and then the end of July for 2012 here for NXT. Again, you're seeing Michael McGillicuddy and Johnny Curtis, a.k.a. Curtis Axel and Fandango, defeating Bo Dallas and Derek Bateman, a.k.a. EC3. Those four are very much into the Florida Championship Wrestling scene, very much into these early NXT years. You had Cesaro, who was still Antonio Cesaro at the time, beats Alex Riley here. Cesaro, I think, is probably one of the greatest wrestlers on the planet right now. Did a lot of good work in NXT in these early years, and then did a lot of good work on the main roster as well in the early NXT takeovers. He was already on the main roster, but they had him come in and do matches against Sami Zayn, which are pretty critically acclaimed if you ever get a chance to watch those. I'm a big fan of Sami Zayn as well. We look a lot alike. This is when the Ascension starts getting their push too. They didn't have any champions at the time. No, that's another thing to remember. So NXT did not have any champions. They didn't have a world title, tag title, women's title, any of that stuff. But the Ascension, who at the time were Conor O'Brien and Kenneth Cameron. Kenneth Cameron would end up going on to NXT. He might have been Gunner or something like that in NXT. I can't exactly remember. But Conor would adopt Victor as his partner after Kenneth Cameron leaves. Kenneth Cameron leaves and goes to TNA. I can't exactly remember. Don't quote me if he was Gunner or not, but he's one of those characters. And so this is funny. This was more when the Ascension was more of like a vampire gimmick. They sort of had the wasteland, Road Warriors type thing towards the end, but they were really working a vampire gimmick, I believe, here. And then in the main event of that, you got Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins. I'll say that again. You got Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins in the main event of an NXT show 8 years ago that you've probably never seen. So that's good quality of wrestling to go back and watch. Granted, they only get 5.5 minutes, but those are two Hall of Fame guys, two now former, either current or former world champions. So that's always fun. In August, the following show, August 1st of 2012, we had the beginnings of the NXT Title Gold Rush Tournament. So Richie Steamboat gets the win back here over Leo Kruger in a quarterfinal match. You see Big E Langston starting to make his first couple appearances here. This is when Big E was starting to come in. You have Jason Jordan and Mike Dalton, aka Tyler Breeze. That's a funny tag team. They beat Camacho and Hunico. And then in a rematch from the previous week, you have Seth Rollins beats Drew McIntyre in a quarterfinal match for the NXT Gold Rush tournament. So again, I hate doing replays of main events and stuff like that, but I would watch Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins. Those are two talented athletes. I could sit through that for 2 weeks in a row. You had Michael McGillicuddy goes over Justin Gabriel in the following week in a Gold Rush quarterfinal match for the tournament. We start seeing Cassius Ohno here. Cassius Ohno, very good hand. He was in NXT, big indie guy, comes in NXT, does the NXT thing for a little while, goes away, goes back to the indies, and then they end up bringing him back into NXT. He's still there now, I believe. But this is him here defeating CJ Parker, who's Juice Robinson now in New Japan. So that's fun seeing that. Jinder Mahal beats Bo Dallas in a quarterfinal Gold Rush match, which is funny because Bo Dallas goes on to be the third NXT champion, and Jinder Mahal gets a win over him here, so that's cool. Jinder Mahal is a good heel. I guess it's always good having the foreign heels that the super pro American guys are gonna want to cheer against and stuff like that. He did a pretty good job with the title, with the world title when they gave it to him. Alright, so that was August 8th. So the following show is August 15th in NXT, back at Full Sail. They had a dark match where Alex Riley gets a win back over Antonio Cesaro, which is funny. Jinder Mahal beats Richie Steamboat in the semifinals of the NXT title tournament. Richie Steamboat kind of got a bad draw. His father, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, is remembered as probably one of the greatest workers of all time. Never really had a heel run. It was a super babyface and super popular guy. Has probably one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, that being against Randy Savage at WrestleMania 3. And Richie ended up having an injury before he even got out of NXT, and he never went to the main roster, and I think he retired. I don't think he does anything more. But it's a shame because he was a good character, very much in the same vein as his father. But here we see him lose in the semifinal match. They bring Scotty 2 Hotty back to go over Heath Slater on the same show. The Usos beat the Ascension by DQ. They weren't having the Ascension lose a lot, especially once they brought in Victor and then had them do the tag title run when they had when they made the tag titles eventually. And I don't think the Ascension lost for like a year and a half. Seth Rollins beats Michael McGillicuddy in the semifinal for the NXT title. And then they had another dark match with Kane and Cody Rhodes. Again, two main roster guys that they're bringing in just for a little flavor there. August 22nd now of 2012, we see Bo Dallas beats Dean Ambrose in a dark match, which is funny. Not a whole lot going on. You see Jay Carter in this episode. Jay Carter, I believe, is the son of Big Van Vader. If you go back and watch some of these episodes from the mid 2012 era, maybe even into 2013, Jay Carter's on a lot of those shows. And he's not as big as his dad. He's not like a big refrigerator-looking type dude. He's sort of reminiscent, similar shape and sizes like an Alex Riley or a Miz, muscular-looking young kid. And they never really did a lot with him. He ended up doing a lot of favors in the ring and stuff. But, it's good to see him. And they didn't push him as Vader's son, which was cool. Again, normal stuff. You got Gabriel and Tyson Kidd beat Johnny Curtis and Michael McGillicuddy in the main event there. So not a whole lot going on there, but again, still quality programming. August 29th of 2012 now. We have, again, not a ton of stuff goes on here, except we see the final for the title match in the Gold Rush tournament. So there's only 3 matches on this card, but the main event being Seth Rollins goes over Jinder Mahal and becomes the first NXT champion. That's August 29th of 2012. Obviously, huge moment for NXT, huge moment for that title, huge moment for Seth Rollins, and that's a quality. Like I said, even though there's only a couple of matches on this one, Definitely something to watch. I remember watching this not too long ago. They put on a good match. Jinder looks a lot different than he does here than he does now. Obviously, he's gained a lot of muscle mass, and you know, he had short hair back then and stuff. But that's good. So there we see, boom, now we have the NXT title is made, and we're off and running with that. So in September 5th of 2012, we see Richie Steamboat beats Cassius Ohno by DQ. Those guys had a nice little feud around this time. I remember in the weekly episodic stuff, Cassius would beat somebody up and Richie would come save him, or, you know, Cassius was interfering in Richie's matches. So that's a good thing to watch, a good program to watch. Ascension goes over the Usos here. Again, they bring Big Show to beat Alex Riley in a dark match. Okay, you got Leo Kruger again. You got Brodus Clay gets a win here. Percy Watson again goes under. That's September 5th of 2012. And September 12th of 2012, we have Big E Langston goes over again. Again, guys like Garrett Dillon, I don't remember him. Chad Baxter. Chad Baxter might have been, he might have been somebody. He might have been that guy that was the referee. No, probably not. Garrett Dillon, I don't remember. And Chad Baxter, let me see if they have a thing here. Nope, okay, it's not who I thought it was going to be. But again, still quite, you know, they have Jey Uso beats Kenneth Cameron. Again, the Usos and the Ascension were kind of feuding over the last couple things, so they have a singles match here. Big E gets the win here. Big E, I believe, was doing the 5-count gimmick at the time. When he'd pin somebody, he would, you know, make the referee count to 5 instead of 3, which King Kong Bundy used to do back in the day. I think a couple other guys have done that gimmick. But that's always fun to see that. So that's in September 12th of 2012. September 19th of 2012, you're seeing Trent Beretta is in there. Paige is starting to get her push now. Paige she had won the previous week. I think I forgot to mention here, she beats Alicia Fox again. Just goes to show you how long Alicia Fox had been in the company. Cassius Ohno defeats Oliver Gray here twice. I think he did some gimmick where he would like beat somebody and then request that they start the match over again as like an exhibition or something like that. I think Oliver Gray may be one of the guys that won the NXT tag title for the first time when they did the first tag title tournament. It might have been him and Neville were the first 2 NXT tag champions, but don't quote me on that. And Seth Rollins beats Rick Victor here. So this is Rick Victor's first appearance in these couple of shows. Rick Victor ended up going on dropping the Rick part, just being Victor, and then goes on to join the Ascension after Kenneth Cameron leaves. So that's September 19th of 2012. September 26th of 2012. Hold on, let me check some of those. September 26th of 2012, okay. We see McGillicuddy beats Bo Dallas, okay, that's normal. Leo Kruger beats Jay Carter, okay, that's normal. Ryback starts coming into the play. So this is Ryback after he had done his stuff as in the Nexus, where he was, Skip Sheffield, they called him in the Nexus, which is probably one of the worst working names of all time. He comes back and he beats 2 dudes in a handicap match, one of them being Aiden English, which is funny. They did that a lot with him, where he was, you know, just squashing 2 or 3 guys at a time. You see Richie Steamboat go over Cassius Ohno here in the main event to kind of culminate their feud, I think, a little bit, which is good. Those guys always put good matches on together. That's September 26th of 2012. Now, let's do October 3rd of 2012, which is the following one. Drew McIntyre goes over Richie Steamboat. So in the 1 week, Richie Steamboat's in the main event, going over, and then the following week, they got Drew McIntyre, who's on top of the world now, comes in and squashes him pretty good in 4 minutes. Again, more of the Ascension. Kenneth Cameron's still there, though. Had not yet switched to Rick Victor. The next episode being October 10th of 2012. We're seeing Dante Dash, who I don't remember at all. Another big dude that, you know, just used as enhancement, I guess. Seth Rollins defeats Michael McGillicuddy to retain the NXT Championship. So this is the beginning of Seth Rollins' title defenses with the NXT title. That's in October 10th of 2012. So if you want to start going back and watching where the NXT title really starts becoming a prize to go after and where people are defending it and fighting over it, it's the middle of October in 2012. The following episode, the 17th of October 2012. My wife's calling, hold on. I'll get back to her. Damian Sandow again is in there. You got Cassius Ohno in the Ascension against Steamboat and the Usos. Again, that's sort of culminating with feuds that they had done for a long time. The following week, which is October 24th of 2012, Heath Slater loses to Seth Rollins in the main event. They were really heavy on Seth Rollins. You know, he's the champion now. They're really promoting him pretty well. So he gets, a lot of rubs there, a lot of main events. October 31st of that year, we're starting to see Cesaro comes in to beat Tyson Kidd for the United States Championship, which is a main roster title at the time. Again, so we can, we're starting to see more main roster dudes coming in. And Roman Reigns beats CJ Parker here, this may be Roman Reigns' debut in NXT. He was big coming in with, his whole gimmick looked different. He had the shirt off and all that, which is fun to see. So again, I'm not going to get into I don't want to get into every single show, every single cast of characters. I know my wife's doing something out here, I think. But 2012 NXT, you're going to see guys like Roman Reigns, guys like Dean Ambrose, guys like Seth Rollins, who all would go on and basically run the company in a couple of years. This is them when they're just cutting their teeth, when they're just getting started, and when they're really putting, when they're trying to grasp that brass ring, as the proverbial term would be. So if you want to go, and then again, this is when they're really starting to go heavy on the TV, go heavy on bringing in main roster guys. Cesaro, like I said, did a lot of good work for them down there. And it's really, really good, just episodic television. This is television that, like the beginnings of Monday Night Raw. It's very similar. This era of NXT, weekly episodic television, is very similar to, Monday Night Raws when they first started in 93, 94, where it was, only an hour. You only had an hour to play with. You only, so they didn't waste a lot of time doing the gaga and the drama, with all this stuff that, a lot of times people like to fast forward to. The NXT tag titles didn't come into play until January 2013. So again, we're only a couple weeks away from the tag titles coming in. And the NXT Women's Championship would come into play in April of 2013. So again, this is the end of 2012. You're seeing Seth Rollins run with the world title, and then how big that got. A couple months later, they do the men's tag titles, and then that goes off and running. And then the women's title, and then NXT started hitting their stride after all that. So if you get a chance, go back and watch this NXT stuff. Starting, let's say, in the middle of 2012, it's definitely on your WWE networks. You can plug it in and just watch all that stuff sequentially. There's no pay-per-views, but it's really, really good quality wrestling that I think a lot of people sleep on and not a lot of people either talk about, or it gets sort of forgotten because it's been so long and people are so used to the NXT nowadays, or just used to the main roster nowadays. So that's about it. I'm going to try to do another one of these today. I got one more left I want to do, and then I'll give out some honorable mentions and stuff like that. So if you're a fan of Big E, if you're a fan of those Shield guys and want to see some up-and-comer guys, maybe some dudes you've never even seen before in a WWE ring or an NXT ring, go check that era out. You probably won't be disappointed. Thank you.